Hey guys, it's Kat, and we're here to do yet another reaction video to something that I've seen in my feed, and we're going to be making some art along the way. I've really enjoyed the era that we're in. I mean, the world may be crumbling in so many different ways, but I am in an era of creativity, and I'm excited to bring more of that to you guys. I'm actually working in this video on a fairy illustration, and I am going to be releasing some designs later on in my shop that include some fairies. Think very Amy Brown, but like make her black. So if you guys want to see what I have in store, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Anyway, let's jump into today's topic. So in this video, I wanted to watch and react to Dave Chappelle's most recent comments, basically taking back at least some of what he said. I wanted to share my perspective on this because I've made a lot of content about Dave Chappelle's content. You guys can go check out the videos that I've linked in the description box below if you guys want to hear my more complete thoughts about Dave Chappelle. But to really quickly summarize my general feelings and thoughts about this, when I think about a lot of Dave Chappelle's jokes, I think most of them are predominantly funny to people who are not very educated about transgender people. And the general criticism that I had of Dave Chappelle's jokes is that I sort of found them to be cheap and easy. And so I've looked at a lot of his jokes about trans people as kind of a sign of decline more than anything. And so I'm really curious to hear what he's had to say, especially in this era that we're in right now, where we're seeing the dehumanization that he sort of, normalized in many ways, take root and actually be used against the transgender community. So let's get into it.
When Minneapolis was going through it. And maybe I was in Paris when they killed Alex Preddy. And man, I booked the show in Minneapolis right after they killed that guy. Like, man, they're going to need to talk about this. And that was nerve-wracking. Another situation, or Tops Market in Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Man,
Man killed like 10 black
10
people.
black people unprovoked in a grocery store. That happened right after I got tackled in L.A. at the Hollywood Bowl. But man, I went to Buffalo. It's not that I think that jokes help, but you can console certain communities with your presence, or just acknowledging that you see them and that you heard with them.
But what about people who feel like you're punching down? Like you are not a trans person. And there are people who feel like it's different when you are part of the group that has been attacked, hurt, demeaned, etc. And then if you're outside of the group and you're having commentary about it, it causes feelings. And what do you say to people who feel that in some occasions you're punching down?
Well, okay, this is a conversation that I'm,
You're bored by, sick of.
Nah, yeah, I'm not sick of it. I don't want to be dismissive to that sentiment, but I don't know. That's a tough one for me because so much of that was a media phenomenon. What was happening in actual life versus how the media was reporting on my show. And I feel like the way they reported on that show was rage baiting to some degree. And there's so many different branches to talk about it. But I would say that, not everything is for everybody. If they bought tickets ever, maybe I'd listen. I don't know. They're just never there. I don't even know who's telling them I say these things.
Do you feel like your jokes are misrepresented, or
I
just,
do.
you think they're misrepresented that for a purpose, which is to
It's almost,
get
some
clicks,
reporting
whatever.
was as if, they almost reported on it as if I was doing something other than a comedy show.
In our society, there's this idea, of course, I mean, it's not so much an idea, it's more of a reality, that there are some of us who have a closer proximity to humanity than others. A lot of Dave Chappelle's comedy is about this in one way or another. He talks quite a bit about his experiences in his youth with racism and how he was constantly having interactions with white people who have in some way dehumanized him. In the past, when I heard a lot of Dave Chappelle's jokes, what was very clear to me is that he does indeed dehumanize trans people, even if occasionally he says things that some people would say are quite flattering towards them. He does indeed engage in dehumanization, but it's dehumanization that I think isn't very noticeable to a lot of people who are not transgender, purely because of how dehumanized trans people are. Like with that shooting in Buffalo, he went in there and shot up all these black people because he knew he could, right? because he knew that he could and he wanted to terrorize a community. And how did he get there? Through multiple layers of dehumanization that he observed throughout his life. Maybe through his family, maybe through his friends, maybe through the people that he cared for and supported and respected, right? But either way, he observed the dehumanization of Black folks and then said, I'm going to end their lives because of it. And a lot of times that dehumanization comes in the form of jokes.
Interesting. So in a way, like you're saying, look, I'm a comedian. Everybody knows that I'm a comedian. So if you don't like my humor, don't buy a ticket.
Reading a joke is a lot different than sitting in a room and hearing it. And part of the sitting in the room part of one of the reasons comedy works is because everyone that bought a ticket, clearly they want it to work. They want to have a good time. They want to have fun. But if you're a person that is very angry or passionate about something, and you're afraid that you're going to be misrepresented or misconstrued, and you feel like you have to police comedy to get your point across, you should assess your point.
There are people who think that trans people are offended and can't take a joke, right? That's been the central idea behind every conversation that I've ever had about Dave Chapelle, is that, like, trans people need to learn how to get thicker skin and to stop being so easily offended. And I will reiterate time and time again, even though I know that the Dave Chapelle audience doesn't believe it, I'm not offended by what Dave Chapelle has to say about trans people. I just find it to be ignorant. And I find it to be an expression of ignorance during a time where that ignorance is quite dangerous. I know that there are a lot of people who disagree with this idea, but experts on genocide have recently discussed that trans people in the United States are experiencing the early stages of genocide. Genocide is something that typically happens. Why? Because a certain group of people within a culture have been so immensely dehumanized that when violence happens to them, it is justified. A lot of people will remember that when Gaza was being bombed, there were videos being made by Israelis who were dressing up as Middle Eastern people and mocking the fact that they were currently experiencing a genocide. And a lot of Americans were very shocked by that. But the thing is, that's just a joke, right? Like, from the perspective of the people making it, that's just a joke. It's just a joke, but it's a joke that, again, is attached to history that has, of course, dehumanized a certain group of people. And if Dave Chapelle has this attitude that he hates the way that people have interpreted what he said, I would hope that that would encourage him to really think a bit harder about what he said. And instead of, dismissing the people that were criticizing him, I would hope that he would hear it and be like, maybe there's something that I should think about changing about what I do.
I know you talked about comedians as being like the nation's kidney who process like all the things that people feel, like all of it, right? The President of the United States says everything. He expresses things that many people find deeply offensive. He expresses them in a way that many people find deeply offensive and hurtful. And I'm just wondering, does that change your work? You know what I'm saying?
No, and he's a bad example because he has a dismissive shorthand about people. Like a comedian, if we're up there talking, it's a way different type of interface than say being president of the United States, because
Oh, it's a totally different job. I credit that, but I'm saying.
I'm talking about not just the job, the actual interface, how we actually are communicating to people.
Well, say more.
Well, the presidency is the presidency. If you vote for the person or not, that's your president. This is an authority figure. This is the top law enforcement agent. This is the top, he's the executor of all of America's affairs. And I just have to move my crowd. You can opt out of my crowd. But you shouldn't have to leave America because the president's making the block too hot for you.
I'll grant that Donald Trump and Dave Chapelle play very different roles in our society. But as I was listening to him talk about Donald Trump, the thing that came to my mind is that I have a very similar issue with Dave Chapelle as I do with Donald Trump. And that issue is that, yes, you actually should try to be a bit more responsible with your platform. I definitely hear what Dave Chapelle is saying because, he feels like he shouldn't have to be stifled. He shouldn't have to not say what he wants to say. But the thing is, when you make a choice to say these things, right, people are gonna have a reaction to it. And ultimately, if you're not somebody who wants to receive criticism for those things, you can simply not say it.
I heard you say if you go to a comedy club somewhere in America, your feelings and thoughts are represented.
Every opinion has a
And
champion.
say more about that, though. Why do you think that matters?
Because it's important, because every opinion that you could think of is championed in a room. I don't silence your champions. In fact, I make space for your champions to have a voice. But I'm not your champion, and I am someone else's. You can't silence the team that you don't like, but you do have the opportunity to go on after them. Say your piece.
It's very interesting to me to listen to Dave Chappelle talk about being silenced and people, not wanting for him to express himself. But also, he's got multiple specials where this has been one of the main topics of conversation for him. He's had every bit of warning about maybe this isn't the best topic for you to discuss, but he still does. He still does. And I do think that comedians should be able to talk about whatever they want to talk about. But what I'm fascinated by is this idea that they shouldn't be held to their word. It's just very odd because I actually think this is another way in which the dehumanization is sort of shown. There's this idea almost that trans people shouldn't at all have an opinion about this, right? That trans people shouldn't at all have a reaction to this. And it's very, very, very strange to me because of course we are. Of course we are. It's always been kind of fascinating to me, the people that, kind of really live and die by this idea that they have the right to offend others who don't ever seem like they want to acknowledge that yes, you do have the right to offend people, but at the same time, you also are going to end up answering to those people because they're offended. Like, on one hand, you want to say that you don't actually mean it. On the other hand, you want to say that you should have the right to say it. It's kind of like, at the end of the day, if you didn't mean it, why say it? Why say it? Again, my criticism of Donald Trump is very similar to my criticism of Dave Chappelle.
And I did resent that the Republican Party ran on transgender jokes. I felt like they were doing a weaponized version of what I was doing. I didn't. It's not what I was doing. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
This is before I learned the phrase "I respectfully decline," and I was on Capitol Hill, and everybody ran up to take pictures with me from every congressional office, and I just take pictures with whoever asked. I didn't ask how they vote or what their voting record is. And everyone at first was like CBC people, and then here comes Lauren Boebert. And she said, "Can I get a picture?" And I'd already taken 40 pictures. I didn't want to say no in front of everybody. But I didn't know the phrase, "I respectfully decline." So I just took the picture. And then she posted a picture before I could even get from there to the show and says something to the effect of, "Just two people that knew that it's just two genders." She instantly weaponized it or politicized it. So I got to the arena and I lit her ass up for doing that. And she should never do that, person like me.
Now she knows what's up.
Yeah, you do whatever the fuck you're doing. Excuse my language. You do whatever it is you do, but don't get me out of the splash zone.
Watching this, I kind of get the vibe that Dave Chappelle is doing a little bit of revisionist history because, well, Dave Chappelle did a little bit more than just make some off-color jokes about trans people. He actually went out of his way to support the discourse around J.K. Rowling, who has been using her money and resources to quite literally make it impossible for trans people to exist within the country that she lives in. It's maddening to me how people can do this thing where they will show their support of stuff like that. They will openly signal support for their ideology. And then when it actually starts to materialize, they'll say, "Oh, wait, but I wasn't really serious about that." And the thing is, if you weren't serious about it, why did you say it? Why did you say it? It's so funny to me that he takes issue with Lauren Boebert turning to him and saying, "Hey, I've got an ally in you." When in all reality, that's exactly what you did. you did demonstrate that you were an ally to people who hold opinions like that. You did not make the point that we shouldn't be doing this to trans people and, don't take my words and use them as like a reason to attack transgender people. Yeah, maybe you peppered in some positive fake stories about one of your trans friends or whatever, but you didn't actually do what you think you did. You just publicly said that you support bigotry against trans people. And then you acted like people were trying to silence you because they were criticizing you. This is someone who has multiple specials on Netflix, right? But he's being silenced. It's absolutely ridiculous. I definitely hear what he's saying about how, the media was rage baiting. And I do think that that's a big part of it. I do think the media took hold of this Dave Chappelle discourse, and a lot of people, were able to make a lot of money talking about Dave Chappelle and how he was transphobic and how the trans community was upset by that. But at the end of the day, he did say that shit. So I don't know why he's acting as if he didn't. And so I'm just pretty annoyed by all of this. I'm pretty annoyed by the entire thing, the entire premise of like Dave Chappelle at the 12th hour, once things really start getting bad, saying, you know what? JK, LOL JK. Because frankly, the time to do that has kind of passed. You could have chosen to just tell a humanizing story about the trans person that you knew, if you needed to include trans people in the conversation at all. But, well, that's not really what sells. And I did think it was very revealing that he said, well, they're not in the seats, because what does that kind of say, right? That he's willing to flatter the people who show up and financially support him. And I guess that makes a lot of sense. I mean, at the end of the day, he is trying to make his money. And I'm not mad at him for it. And I do believe to some degree he deserves it, right? But I do think that there needs to be more thought around this. I do think there needs to be more consideration around this. If you're a person who does not want to be regarded as a transphobe, I think it's pretty easy to not latch onto the common dehumanized narratives about transgender people. Maybe I'm overthinking it though. I would absolutely love to hear what you guys have to say about Dave Chappelle's most recent comments. I kind of think that they're all over the place. I don't really know what to say, honestly, about this, other than I don't know why you are finally starting to kind of get it, because that's ultimately the result of it. Like, the result of you making these jokes is that they're normalized to people who do actually believe those things, who now look at a celebrity with a platform and they say, wow, we've actually got a person who's in Hollywood who agrees with us and supports us, which of course signals to them politically that if they turn against the transgender community, no one's going to do anything about it. And that's actually what's happening right now. I don't want to put this at the feet of Dave Chappelle, but it's hard for me to ignore that when Dave Chappelle started making those jokes, it very much did end up leading to a lot of conversations where people validated transphobic premises. And yes, that was very useful to people who are trying to politically organize against transgender people. But in my opinion, trans jokes are easy jokes. They're easy jokes based in a thing that most people have anxiety around: gender. So it's something that's very easy to laugh about, but is not actually very commonly understood. So that's my opinion. I would love to hear yours in the comment box below. On that note, I want you guys to stay hot and introspective, and always remember and never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.